Thank you very much. Well, it is wonderful to be back in Springfield, and I see so many familiar faces. To Mr. Hart, to Marilyn, to my Secretary of Transportation, Ray LaHood, to two of the finest governors that we've had in the past, Jim Thompson and Jim Edgar. To Laura Lynn Ryan, and to our new governor, who's going to be doing outstanding work for us in the future, Pat Quinn. To Reverend McCants, and to my dear friend Loretta Durbin. I do feel guilty because Dick was the one who brought this event to my attention. I'm here, and he's there. But part of the reason that Dick Durbin has been such a great friend, not just to me, but to the people of Illinois, is because his work always comes first, and he has been unbelievable in providing leadership in the Senate through thick and through thin. And I'm very, very grateful to him. He is one of my greatest friends, and I would not be standing here if it were not for Dick Durbin. So please give Dick Durbin a big round of applause. So it is wonderful to be back in Springfield, the city where I got my start in elective office, and where I served for nearly a decade. I see some of my colleagues, your Attorney General, Lisa Madigan, in the House, and you've got some constitutional officers there. I think that's Alexi, your treasurer, who's going to be playing basketball with me at some point, Dan Hines, comptroller, and just an incredible supporter during this past race, and your new Senate President, John Cullerton, one of the sharpest legislators that we've ever had. Is the Speaker around? He's over there. Mr. Speaker, it's good to see you. Thank you. So I've got a lot of friends here. I've got to stop there, otherwise I'm going to be using up all my time. So I served here for nearly a decade. And as has already been mentioned, this is where I launched my candidacy for president 2 years ago this week on the steps of the old state capitol, where Abraham Lincoln served and prepared for the presidency. It was here nearly 150 years ago that the man whose life we are celebrating today, who you've been celebrating all week, bid farewell to this city that he had come to call his own. And as already been mentioned, on a platform at a train station not far from where we're gathered, Lincoln turned to the crowd that had come to see him off and said, "To this place and the kindness of these people, I owe everything." And being here tonight, surrounded by all of you, I share his sentiment. But looking out at this room full of so many who did so much for me, I'm also reminded of what Lincoln once said to a favor seeker who claimed it was his efforts that made the difference in the election. Lincoln asked him, "So you think you made me president?" "Yes," the man replied. "Under Providence, I think I did." "Well," said Lincoln, "it's a pretty mess you've got me into. But I forgive you." So whoever of you think you are responsible for this, we're taking names. It's a humbling task, marking the bicentennial of our 16th president's birth. Humbling for me in particular, because it's fair to say that the presidency of this singular figure who we celebrate in so many ways made my own story possible. Here in Springfield, it's easier, though, to reflect on Lincoln the man rather than the marble giant. Before Gettysburg, before Antietam, before Fredericksburg and Bull Run, before emancipation was proclaimed and the captives were set free. In 1854, Lincoln was simply a Springfield lawyer who'd served just a single term in Congress. Possibly in his law office, his feet on a cluttered desk, his sons playing around him, his clothes a bit too small to fit his uncommon frame, maybe wondering if somebody might call him up and ask him to be Commerce Secretary. He put some thoughts on paper, and for what purpose we do not know. The legitimate object of government, he wrote, is to do for the people what needs to be done, but which they cannot, by individual effort, do it all, or do so well by themselves. To do for the people what needs to be done, but which they cannot do on their own. It's a simple statement, but it answers a central question of Abraham Lincoln's life. Why did he land on the side of union? What was it that made him so unrelenting in pursuit of victory that he was willing to test the Constitution he ultimately preserved? What was it that led this man to give his last full measure of devotion so that our nation might endure? Now, these are not easy questions to answer, and I cannot know if I'm right, but I suspect that his devotion to the idea of union came not from a belief that government always had the answer. It came not from a failure to understand our individual rights and responsibilities. This rugged rail splitter, born in a log cabin of pioneer stock, who cleared a path through the woods as a boy, who lost a mother and a sister to the rigors of frontier life, who taught himself all that he knew, and everything that he had was because of his hard work. This man, our first Republican president, knew better than anybody what it meant to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. He understood that strain of personal liberty and self-reliance, that fierce independence at the heart of the American experience. But he also understood something else. He recognized that while each of us must do our part, work as hard as we can, be as responsible as we can, although we are responsible for our own fates, in the end, there are certain things we cannot do on our own. There are certain things we can only do together. There are certain things only a union can do. Only a union could harness the courage of our pioneers to settle the American West, which is why Lincoln passed a Homestead Act, giving a tract of land to anyone seeking a stake in our growing economy. Only a union could foster the ingenuity of our framers, the ingenuity of our farmers, which is why he set up land-grant colleges that taught them how to make the most of their land while giving their children an education that let them dream the American dream. Only a union could speed our expansion and connect our coasts with the transcontinental railroad. And so, even in the midst of civil war, Lincoln built one. He fueled new enterprises with a national currency, and spurred innovation, and ignited America's imagination with the National Academy of Sciences, believing we must, as he put it, add the fuel of interest to the fire of genius in the discovery of new and useful things. And on this day, that is also the bicentennial of Charles Darwin's birth, it's worth a moment to pause and renew that commitment to science and innovation and discovery that Lincoln understood so well. Only a union could serve the hopes of every citizen, to knock down the barriers to opportunity and give each and every person the chance to pursue the American dream. Lincoln understood what Washington understood when he led farmers and craftsmen and shopkeepers to rise up against an empire. What Roosevelt understood when he lifted us from depression, built an arsenal of democracy, created the largest middle class in history with the GI Bill.